After driving a Tesla Model 3 for over 3 years and BYD Atto 3 for over 1 year, my journey through the southern island of New Zealand made me choose cars which are not electric. And in this video, I'll share my journey and my thoughts on how it changed. So, the two cars I had to drive were a Toyota Highlander, which was a hybrid, and then a Audi Q7, which is this one, and this one's a diesel. The difference wasn't just about the engines. It was a deep dive into convenience, cost, as well as practicality of our choices when it comes to transportation. So, firstly, let me tell you how much we drove and what was that experience like. So, we drove from Queenstown to Christchurch, which is on the right side of the map if you look at it, and then went to Nelson, which is a town at top of the north end of the South Island. Then we went to Hokitika, which is another beautiful little town on the left side or the west coast. And it's not easy to sort of tell those experiences with this beautiful scene out there disturbing your thought. And Queenstown is really beautiful. Like we heard that it's beautiful, but if you look it through your own eyes, it's very different and amazingly pleasing as well as calm. Like when we moved from Melbourne to Queensland, we thought Queensland is calm, but this is another level of just beautiful landscapes as well as an amazing place to travel. So, among our travels from Queenstown all the way around the South Island and back to Queenstown, we traveled almost 2,400 kilometers. Out of those, most of the kilometers were through Toyota Highlander, which is a hybrid vehicle. Although it's a hybrid, but it was still quite a bit of money that we spend on fuel, because compared to electric cars, especially when we're charging at home, it seemed quite a bit expensive, and the fuel prices in general were a bit more expensive compared to what we have in Australia. Like we ended up paying something around $2.80 compared to around $2 for the cheapest fuel. We are in Queenstown. Yes, Bacha. So the son wants to contribute something to it. This is the beautiful Queenstown Gardens. And compared to Queensland's gardens, I cannot say I miss the lizards and the reptiles around in Queensland, because as you might be aware, New Zealand doesn't have any reptiles. In my EV journey in Australia, it's part of a routine where I have to plan my journey around the charging stops. With the fuel powered cars in New Zealand, I no longer had to hunt for the charge stops. But every time I stopped for a fuel top up, the bill of hundreds of dollars was shocking, although it's only been 3 years since I stopped paying for fuel. My typical EV range is from 350 to 400 kilometers, but over here in New Zealand, I was clocking 500 to 600 kilometers in a day, totaling to over 2,500 kilometers in a span of a week. With hilly terrain of New Zealand, it was quite clear that solely relying on the EV to be my single source of transport wouldn't be a practical choice. And it's not even like there were too many options available to rent out an EV. At first, the idea of not having to plan for charging stops felt liberating. Yet, that freedom came at a steep price. The price, both monetarily as well as mentally. The expenses for the fuel stops were quite a lot, and it was over $100 each time I charged, or not charged, but filled up my car. Well, The noise of the engine is something which you don't realize until you've driven electric cars for a bit. Constant vibration and the noise of both the Highlander and Audi is also something which I had to get used to, because with my electric cars there's no transition between gears, so the overall experience is quite smooth. Doesn't matter if you're driving uphill or downhill, it's similar experience. But with these cars, fuel powered cars, you get to feel the vibration, and especially if you are traveling more than 500 kilometers on each leg between different cities, the vibration of the road mixed with the vibration from the engine is something which your body feels even after you stopped overnight, and that's something which I think would have been avoided in an electric car. And it's not just only that. While we picked up our Audi, it was already showing a sign of fuel being low, or some sort of notification saying that maintenance is needed, which just reminded me how much convenient it is to have a electric car setup where you don't have to worry about too many moving parts. But then again, it was a quick stop at a mechanic, fortunately, but still it took a different approach for us to plan our way around that visit. And if it were to do with your own cars, I think it would be something which is a regular concern as well. Like, there's a lot of moving parts in those fuel powered cars, which means a lot can go wrong. Switching from the silent, instantaneous acceleration of my EVs to the constant hum and vibrations of the Highlander and Audi was a shock to the system. Every gear shift in these fuel powered machines felt like a reminder of the bygone era, making me appreciate the smooth, refined drive of electric vehicles even more. Well, fuel stops are almost ritualistic. Pull in, pump, pay, and move on. While charging an EV, on the other hand, often happens in the background while you sleep, shop, or relax. Well, I understand over long journeys, the repetitive nature of fuel stops felt like a interruptions that sort of chipped away from the experience, because similar to electric charging stations, sometimes the fuel stops are that far apart that you actually have to think about that would you be able to make it to the next charging station, or in that case fuel station, or not. But that experience was way different when you have more than 800 kilometers range in your car. And that brings us to the discussion of what's the best approach then. Well, in my opinion, I think plug-in hybrids would be something which you should consider, or which I would consider if I were living in a country like New Zealand, and I do have to travel on the mountainous terrain more often than not. And there could be unplanned trips because the country is so beautiful, as you might have seen in the videos. And I'll actually show you this lake, right? This is the central lake called Wakatipu. It's on the shore, like it's in the Queenstown area, and that's one of the lakes which the I think city is built around. And this lake itself is almost 400 meters deep. And if you think about how deep that is, the deepest dive that a human has done is, I think, around 320 meters. So it's even deeper than that. It actually goes below the sea level, I think, 50 meters, which just tells you the scale of this amazing little, or not little, a huge lake. But the water is so clear, the city is so vibrant and good, and the overall experience is quite nice of driving in New Zealand, which means more often than not, if you're living here, you would want to travel, you would want to have those drive experiences, and hence plug-in hybrid would make more sense if you want to still enjoy the electric lifestyle of being not paying that much for fuel, as well as not paying anything if it's under 100 kilometers for those couple of cars. And even Havel had 6 got a new plug-in hybrid which says 180 kilometers, but even if it gives 100 kilometers of range, it should be enough for your daily commutes. And that just would bring the experience of having that EV driving experience, where there's very less vibrations. You get to charge your car on your convenience overnight and travel for hundreds of kilometers without paying anything, or not as much as we have paid for the fuel over the fuel stations. This journey was more than just the change in vehicles. It was an exploration into the evolution of our mobility choices. While the fuel car handled these hilly terrains, it also highlighted the current limitations of the EV technology.